I think you really, really need to give a shit about the thing that you're doing. And these people, like Travis at Uber is like one kind of guy. Ben at Pinterest, like a totally different kind of guy. I knew them both really well before they were successful, and they're totally different guys. But they both just cared like so much about the things they were doing. And so I think all this other stuff maybe doesn't matter, but like caring about the quality of the thing that you're making is how you win in the market.
Welcome back to the Eric Ries Show. My guest today is Lukas Biewald, and unless you're an AI developer, you probably don't know his startup called Weights and Biases. But if you've ever used any AI product in the world, it's a safe bet the developers who made it used his product behind the scenes. Weights and Biases makes developer tools specifically for machine learning. They're yet another overnight success that was years in the making. In this conversation, we talk about the full arc of that journey, including their acquisition for a rumored $1.7 billion by CoreWeave. But before that, Lukas founded one of the first crowdsourcing companies. He got fired from his own startup and even invented an unpaid internship for himself at OpenAI just to get back on the cutting edge. In this conversation, Lukas shares the hard-won lessons that have come with that journey, why the same founder can be dismissed as incompetent one year and celebrated as a genius the next, why the only consistent trait among people who build enduring companies is that they genuinely care about the work long before it's successful, and why the most powerful growth strategy isn't a pitch deck or a hack, it's actually showing customers you care about them. Lukas has seen AI and startups from every conceivable angle: success, failure, rebuilding, and now a level of success few of us can imagine. His candor about what really matters in building a company is a reminder I think every founder could take to heart. Please enjoy my conversation with Lukas Biewald. Well, thanks for coming on, and really excited to get a chance to chat.
Yeah, likewise.
So first of all, congrats on closing the acquisition. I know that was not, these things are never easy to do. And it's been really phenomenal to see the trajectory you guys have been on. So congrats.
Thanks so much. Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Yeah. Before we get to AI and machine learning and everything, we got to talk about Go.
Oh yeah.
Because I noticed that you played. Do you still play?
I play very rarely these days. Yeah, probably only like once or twice a year, but I used to be very, very obsessed with it.
Yeah, me too. Well, and it's such a critical thing to start with, because I can remember, being in college and talking to people about whether in our lifetimes a computer would ever play Go, even at a professional level, let alone, deep blue level. And like most people would have said probably not, or like maybe if we got really lucky at some point. And then I can still remember AlphaGo just almost felt like it came out of nowhere, just creating this like incredible sensation. And I feel like that was really the harbinger of the new age. Like, totally. Given that you had followed Go, you were into it, that must have been a big deal for you too, right?
Yeah, it was actually a huge deal. I in college, when I was in high school, I kind of wanted to be a professional Go player. Like it's a kind of important thing. Like, I wasn't super challenged in like, school, and then Go kind of gave me this unlimited, capacity to get really, good at something. And I'm not like the best in the world or anything, but I was like really strong for, being an American. And then I actually got into programming Go. So I on my own kind of thought about, okay, how would you program a Go program? And I got involved in GNU Go, which was like an early, attempt at building it. So like, I really had this visceral experience of like, wow, like, chess, you have something to hold on to because there's a pretty simple evaluation function, and most games have a kind of a simple evaluation function. But, Go is like totally missing that. And the branching's higher, but I really think the fact that it's very hard to look at a board and evaluate who's winning in any kind of programmatic way, made it just feel like totally impossible. And like I could beat like any Go program I could get my hands on, right up until AlphaGo. Like I could like crush it, easily. And so I remember when that happened, I was just kind of like, no way. And it was actually at a moment where I had been running like an AI labeling startup for many years, and I'd kind of gotten a little bit weaker in my technical skills. Like, I studied AI, but it was kind of pre-deep learning. And that was just like a huge slap in the face for me of just like, oh my God, like I got to get more technical. I got to understand like neural nets and deep learning. And that kind of actually really led me to starting, Weights and Biases. But I remember like I was like staying up late to watch those games live. I kept thinking there's no way. And the program was just so ferocious. And then, it actually like, it had these like a little bit of idiosyncrasies, at the time, but actually that one was trained more on expert moves. But then when they came out
Yeah.
with the one that was trained from scratch, and I don't know about you, I always thought like there's funny things in Go where it's like, the best move is maybe like the 3-4 point or the 4-4 point. It's like not in the middle of the board. It's like really oddly like asymmetric, moves, and it kind of feels wrong somehow. And I always wondered, as a kid, like I wonder if in my lifetime I'll ever get to know like what the best move really is and why. And now we're starting to see it, and we're starting to see actually Go has changed a lot. Like you asked if I had played some Go, and it's really odd to me when I play Go because I'm trained in like a different era, like pre,
Oh
computers.
yeah,
And so
all your just all your opening moves are all obsolete.
I know, and I kind of love it. Like it's crazy that those good moves are just sort of like sitting there, and like once we saw them, we could understand that they were good, but they were just like kind of available for anyone to see. But like, no one really noticed how strong the 3-3 invasion, could be. And so you wouldn't normally play it.
Oh yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah,
I'm just barely old enough to have been taught that that is not a good invasion to make, and now everybody makes it all
bummer.
the time.
Yeah, exactly.
And I love talking about this because not I know some of our listeners will know what we're talking about, and others are not familiar with the game. But to me, this is like the metaphor for understanding everything about AI, both because there's such a clean delineation between what good old fashioned AI could do and what the new AI was. Like good old fashioned AI can win at chess, but not at Go, and Go is just has this superhuman performance. But also, the idea that there's this like unbelievable productivity just lying there waiting. And in fact, like if you Go history, there are some like professional players over the years that were like really into certain moves that we now know from AI are the best ones. But like they would only play them sometimes because it was almost like embarrassing to be playing like non-consensus best moves. And it was so difficult for people to even tell, well, what is the best? And I think that, and this is kind of what I wanted to get your perspective on, like you're deep into the insides of how these models are made and trained. And I think what's funny about the AI going from this like obscure thing that only like a couple of us were interested in to like, the most, the most prominent topic in the world that everyone's pouring all its money and time and attention is that we form these kind of like best practices and conventional wisdom about AI that is so short lived.
Totally.
People like for 6 months will be like, aha, now AI is good at this, but it's not good at that. The best strategy is this. The best way to prompt it is that. And like, we've gone through them so fast, we can hardly remember. And I just thought, you're so much closer to the real first principles of how these things are made. It kind of be interesting to get your perspective. I want to obviously hear the weights and biases story, but also like for people who are not as close to the bare metal as you are, to get your perspective on like what is it like? What is it that made this technology possible, and why does it work? And maybe we could start there because that to me is still the most mind-bending thing about AI. For all the demonstrations I've seen, for why I can watch AlphaGo beat Lee Sedol, which I thought was impossible. I could watch it defeat any player now. I've played against it myself, so it's obviously, evidently very intelligent. And of course, everyone who's used a chatbot, I still to this day cannot believe what it can do based on what I understand about how intelligence works and how. So like just I want to maybe start with that. Is like, what is your take on why this technology works at all? Like, not why does it work so well? This is like to me like the talking dog. Once you stipulate there's a talking dog, you can discuss does this dog talk, but like, how is it possible that something so simple can produce such apparently impossibly complex outcomes?
Well, I think it's a deep question, and people don't really know, right? So, like, these neural nets, right, are these like incredibly simple, but complicated in the sense of like they have tons and tons of free variables, right? Like, could have like billions or more kind of free variables in these sort of simple equations, right? And then they can do things like predict, the next letter. And I don't know, like when I was in school, we'd make these like hidden Markov models that could like predicts the next letter with like a few things, and you understand like, okay, like H is more likely after T, and you can kind of make things that sort of look like gibberish, right? But these models can predict
Yeah.
so well that they get intelligence in there, and I think like it's kind of this combination of like massive compute and massive data lets it happen, right? We have untold trillions of examples of like tokens and like good text, and then we also have we're able to actually do like gradient descent and kind of find optimal parameters for um, these models. And I guess if you sort of like zoomed way out and said, okay, what if you spent like infinite time looking at all possible text trying to predict like the next token, you would have to sort of encode all of human intelligence, right? If you're really trying to predict, the best possible way, like what's the next like word coming out of my mouth, or what's the next like character in a sentence, like some things are easy. Like if I see the or th, and maybe e is like really likely like after that, right? But it's like after like a period where I've made some kind of complicated logical point, like what's next, or like in the middle of a mathematical theorem, like what am I going to say next? Like that actually, you really need deep knowledge to really get that last piece of probability, or like kind of reduce the perplexity, they call it, of predicting the next letter. So I think it's like this very powerful thing. If you really think like if I want to predict the next letter or token really, really perfectly, I kind of would have to learn all of human knowledge. Or like if I wanted to predict the next frame in a video from the last few frames, I'd kind of have to understand kind of all of physics, kind of a lot of like culture and what Hollywood's thinking. Like you would have to actually like do a lot to do these, the final piece of accuracy on a simple task. So I think the mystery, maybe it's not a mystery that with infinite time it could do that. And it is sort of staggering if you think about how much compute is happening to find it. Like the gradient descent is really powerful to kind of find the best parameters over these like billions of or trillions, of parameters in these models. I think there's some questions on like why doesn't it sort of get stuck at local like optimums? Like how does it kind of get out and really find the best overall sets of parameters? So, like why doesn't it overfit? If you have like a trillion parameters, you almost could like encode all of the knowledge, but yet somehow these models are more resistant to overfitting than you would think. And I mean, it's a research topic a little bit outside of my area of expertise, but I do think if you talk to the smartest people about the stuff, what they'll tell you is like some of these things really are still kind of mysteries that we can kind of find these models to do it. And I don't know if you had the experience of like running these LLMs like on your laptop, but somehow to me that's also like extremely mind blowing. You can like open a file that's just like like a gigabyte or a couple of gigabytes, and it can
the first time I downloaded Stable Diffusion onto my laptop, which I think the first initial rev of it was 4 gigabytes or something like that, a file. And somehow I was like, the sum total of all human aesthetic styles can somehow be encoded in 4 gigabytes.
Yeah, totally.
That was, I really haven't gotten over it still. And I think, I don't know how you feel, like, obviously there's a lot of, I think it's really, I'm glad you started with like what we don't know. I think as people are rushing around trying to draw conclusions about the future of AI and the future of humanity as it relates to AI, so many of these questions depend on empirical questions that are not yet answered. Like when will the scaling laws level off, if ever? Yeah. Seems like kind of a big one. Do models have a world model inside? Like, are they actually gaining some level of what we would recognize as knowledge about the world, or is it all stochastic parrots all the way down? But to me, the much bigger thing, and I'm curious if you've had this experience too, is what it reveals about human intelligence. Because to me, it just seems really clear that human intelligence is not what we thought it was.
Interesting.
Like
what do you mean?
Well, it's like language by itself, I guess, is powerful enough to produce all of the. It's like, like remember when people first started playing really strong chess computers, and I remember, like, as with everything that AI has done, they'd be like, well, that's not, chess is not a sign of intelligence anymore. You're like, well, a second ago we used to say chess was one of the most important. What changed? All it changed. Like, it can't be intelligence if it's so simple to compute. And I feel like something similar is going on here, where it's like, I guess a lot of what we previously called intelligence is really just language, and language is basically the most powerful technology ever.
Well, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's a slightly different point, but it kind of reminded me of like, I think we do this thing where to try to decide if something is like smart, we sort of ask ourselves, was that like difficult for me to do? And I think it's like exactly the wrong test, where it's like, maybe the most complicated thing we do is like use our 10 fingers to like tie a knot, you know what I mean? Or like, even like pick up an arbitrary object, carefully, like picking up an egg without like cracking it and then not dropping it. It's like kind of amazing, right? We're constantly like update, like gripping a little more and less. And even like you see this with like, like these days, and this is going to get out of date soon, but like LLMs can solve like Math Olympiad problems that like I'm like jealous of it. I'm like, man, it's like way above like what I can do. And then but sometimes I give it like a fun brain teaser that my friend told me, and it like can't figure out even how to like approach it, even though it's like like sort of a much simpler problem, but maybe with sort of less structure than Olympiad questions. But I really think that that test that we do so intuitively of like, is this hard for me? Like, therefore it's intelligence. Like, do I have to think hard about this? I actually think it's like anti-correlated with sort of what's going to be challenging for like a synthetic neural net.
Yeah. Yeah, that clearly, I mean, that's clearly one of the most time-tested heuristics so far as we've gone through these different eras.
Totally.
So taking it back to when this all kind of struck you, you said you were kind of a little bit in a more of a non-technical job. You were at CrowdFlower at the time, is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yes.
you built this kind of data annotation startup. Ironically, like a really big business now, but
Totally.
way too early. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
And you kind of got a little bit non-technical. You saw the AlphaCode thing. You saw Lisa et al. Be defeated.
Mhm.
Said it galvanized you. Like,
Yeah.
what were you thinking at that time, and what did you do about it?
Well, yeah. I mean, so just to back up like for a second, what happened was I was really want to be an AI researcher. I did research in Daphne Kohler's lab at the Stanford AI lab at like a really exciting moment where that was the year that like we won the DARPA Grand Challenge and there's a lot of cool stuff happening, but it felt like very impractical. It's kind of like all the research papers were just based on the data sets that were available. And I was kind of working
Mm.
more on the language side where it was kind of the worst, where they're the kind of these hand annotated data sets that were like very like annotated by linguists. So it was like very, like we're going to do the parse tree of this thing and like really unclear like what you're ever going to like use that for. And so, I started a data annotation company, I think back in like 2006, because I felt like the best thing I could offer the world is like push these things forward through, labeling data. And it was like a really hard run. I mean, I was like young and stupid, right? But also, I don't think I got the most supportive investors. Just that's a kind of random chance, but I didn't really have. I just didn't happen to get investors that were kind of really supportive of a young CEO.
Yeah.
Doing that, and like I remember, when your book came out, it was really interesting because it sort of helped sort of like put language around the kind of things that felt intuitive, but also the market was like very it was kind of deep but small. It was like a very consolidated market at the time. We got some early great deals. We closed eBay and Yahoo, which are like big deals like back then. And like with big deals like 500K, $1 million labeling deals felt big. But then the everyone around me was like, Lucas, you need to like expand this to like more like the enterprise. Like you're just focused on these like kind of tech forward things, but the enterprise wasn't really ready to buy it, and the market was actually
Wow.
the pro move would was a in hindsight it would have been smart to just go really deep with like Google and and a couple companies that mattered at the time. But so we had like a hard run, we're like that so like you get off to like a fast start in a marathon, it's like painful, right? Because you kind of hit a wall. Like we weren't growing revenues, even going backwards sometimes, and like I've been running a company. My board at one point fired me. Then they like brought me back because the company is in such shambles, no one would do it. And so I learned a lot of like, managing a company that's not really working, which is like its own, painful skill. But it's like I
Yeah.
was 10 years in when that AlphaGo thing came out, and also around the same time that Nature paper came out where they did ImageNet, and then they used
Yeah.
it. They fine tuned it on like skin cancer, and they could detect skin cancer. So those two things, I was like, oh wow, like these are like really interesting new applications. And I felt so bad about myself at that moment because I was like, I spent my career, kind of being like a bad turnaround CEO or something, where like I was on this path to be like an AI researcher, which I really loved, but
Mm.
just took a weird turn and like stayed CEO for most of the time. So like it wasn't like I was kind of sharpening my technical skills, but it was cool
Well,
because it got.
and that's like a common trap, by the way. I mean, I appreciate you talking about it so candidly because I know so many incredibly talented people that get kind of stuck with like the zombie company that's, sort of working, but sort of not. And they feel like they are the only one who can do it.
Totally.
It's not really what they want to be doing. And I just think that's a lot of gravitational pull there to try to extricate yourself from.
Yeah, but it's also like, some people are willing to walk away, and I'm kind of impressed by that. But I think, like, I don't know, it's not my style, to just be like, okay, this is there. And the crazy thing is, it's like actually had a pretty good outcome. Like, I sold it for $300 million, which is life changing, fantastic. But, it's funny because it was way too soon. So, like, Scale came along, and, like, they recently sold for, like, billions of dollars. And I think actually the market's even bigger. So it's funny. Like, I don't know like what the message is or like the lesson is even, from that. Like I was really happy to sell it and sort of like get to do something new. But I think if you're too early, even if you are right and you're like tough, it's like still not enough, right? Because it's like, like frustrated board, frustrated executive team. Like there's a lot of advantages to just coming in, with fresh eyes, even though it's like, wow, we have like 10 years of experience with this. Like, shouldn't that be like worth something? We have like all these like customers, we have like a kind of a functioning marketplace in some ways. But, honestly, it would have been better to to start fresh. So I don't know. I mean, that like I don't really know what the the takeaway is. I was very happy to sell it, but that was like a happy outcome that was by no means like
I can
guaranteed
imagine,
at
yeah.
that time. I don't want to give people
Well,
like false hope.
well, it's also a story of VC impatience, which I feel like today's boardrooms are like so incredibly impatient.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's a shame, it's like, I don't think that there's any evidence at all that like putting that kind of pressure, especially on a young CEO, like is likely to produce better outcomes than if you just let them do their thing, So I think there's this idea that you have to be like tough and push hard and like, chase the enterprise deals and whatever, instead of really thinking about what's the biggest opportunity. And I think that's a lot of people in a very stressful situation, just because all these important people are telling them this is what they got to do. And they don't have the experience to say, wait a minute, they may be important, fancy people. Do they actually know anything about my business? Do they know what they're talking about? And,
yeah, I'm surprised in retrospect. I think my board was pretty bad. Like, I think like, I wonder what they would say in retrospect. I don't know if they would have the self-awareness to think about that, but, I certainly
what the multiple was they made on their on the final investment outcome, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. It's I can understand everyone's perspective here to some extent, and like it's not clear that if they had like lifted the pressure off and we had just struggled for 10 years, if we would have been successful either. Because it just was like we were kind of so far off, and like we were losing money. So it's like when you're in that situation, you are kind of vulnerable, to your board. So so I don't know. I wish I had crisp lessons, but maybe that's for my really old age.
No, I actually really appreciate not getting the packaged lesson story, because I just feel like for people, there's somebody listening right now who's like in that exact situation, and just to feel like they're not the crazy one. This is something that happens even to really successful companies, even to really successful entrepreneurs. Like that's really important.
Well, Eric, the crazy thing is, it's like it's like that's like the modal case. Like what happened to me, right? It's like most companies are actually like stuck, and I think there's even like I feel like VCs come up with these like benchmarks of like where should your like growth rate be and like your revenue be and all this stuff, and it's like they like take like IPO companies and like work backwards and sort of say, oh, these are like the quartiles of like a company that goes on to like IPO, which is like less than 1% of the companies, right? So you think you like taking crazy pills, right? But you're actually like most companies are stuck, like by definition, or else like this market would just be growing like insanely fast. So
if we coached sports that way, it would be like really quite deadly. You'd be like, okay, Usain Bolt is this fast, so you will need to be that fast too. And it's like, or like when he was at your stage, he was this. It's just like, wait a minute, but that's the fastest person alive.
Yeah.
So right, like, is that really the only standard against which to judge? And I think the really bad part of it is it's just not helpful. Okay, so like like people talk about product market fit, you know it when you see it. So, yeah, but what if I don't see it? Then what? All I can do is yell at you for not having product market fit. Like get it harder. It's like, well, but can you give me something more? Can we be a little more practical or specific? Can we set intermediate milestones or benchmarks? And I think like the very best investors, of course, are really good at that. But a lot of them, I think, just were raised in an old school management idea, which is like you set a target and then you put as much pressure as possible to hit the target. But in startups, we often have targets we don't know if they're achievable.
Totally.
So maybe we didn't hit it because we didn't work hard enough, but maybe like there's some fundamental problem and it's time to pivot,
Totally.
Okay, so anyway, you got yourself out of there and you got a pretty good outcome. So that's pretty awesome. You're feeling the stress of the AI field leaving you by, ironically, even though you tried to enter it and do something really important for it. And even despite being completely right about that being a very important part of the development of the field in later years, as we would see, what was the next step?
Well, it's funny, actually, I did two things. The story's even a little messier because I actually got fired by my board a second time around then. I finally got pulled back to ultimately like get the outcome. So board members, if you're listening.
You were hired and rehired twice.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? And I can't believe I did it. The third time I was just like, what on earth am I, like, why am I doing this? Like, so yeah, second time they fired me. I actually like, it's funny. I had just gotten married and I was trying to buy a house in San Francisco, couldn't afford it. And I was feeling like pretty bad about myself, as you can imagine. And it's like, you know what, I'm going to start, I'm going to teach some classes on AI for like software engineers. Cause I kind of like learned it. And I felt like, if I teach these classes, it'll help me, like it'll kind of force me to learn it more.
Yeah.
And so I started like actually just charging like, I don't know, like $100 a ticket for classes for software engineers to like learn AI. And it was like a really great, I mean, for someone with really like not a lot of money, man, it was like, whoa, I can make like, I don't know, like 20 grand pop, like in a day, like doing this. And it's actually like super fun. And I kept announcing, like people kept saying like, oh, I want like another class, I was like, man, I gotta like learn another day's worth of like, material. But that like really had part of market fit. So I was doing that teaching. And then I went to OpenAI and I was like, hey, um, can I just be like an intern? Like, you don't have to pay me. Just like, let me do the, whatever you want. And so they actually, it's funny. It was such a small company and it was like chaos because it was like a little nonprofit. At the
Yeah,
time
this
they
is
let
way
me,
before anyone thought OpenAI was going to be a world-beating company. They weren't even a company
yeah,
yet.
they were a nonprofit. Now I see all the drama that was happening around me with like Elon Musk stuff, but I was just blissfully unaware. I got this internship, totally unofficial internship, like working for this like, 23-year-old guy who's like super smart. And like, but then it caused me to like, I was like coding, I was like talking to like this, really, really smart people. Because the thing about OpenAI at the time was it basically had all these people at different levels of academia who are not really interested in writing papers, but actually wanted to like ship stuff and also not interested in status. Like, so it's like people who really believed in themselves as like really effective. And so that was like pretty intoxicating. So I started teaching the classes and I started doing that unpaid internship. And actually that got me technical again, like pretty fast. It got me like starting to feel like really confident, because I was, just the teaching really forces you to learn stuff. And then the internship made me feel like, oh, I'm like, I actually can hang at like the most cutting edge, although I was definitely the worst programmer there. I mean, it was amazing to
How did you
have.
get the idea to pitch them on an internship that you were unqualified even to do?
Oh, you know what it was actually? Is this guy, Bob McGrew, and he
Huh?
had been a friend from school. And then he was like running a huge team at Palantir, like I think 1,000 people. And he was like, he took a software developer job at OpenAI. And I talked to him and I just admired it so much. Like it just seemed so fun. And I was like, ooh, like, could I do that? And I was just like, even like, I don't know if I want to like kind of commit to a paid job. So maybe if they don't pay me, then it won't feel like I'm, committing so much. Cause also the classes were making a ton of money. Well, it seemed like a lot, so the class thing was really like paying the bills. Yeah. So that was Bob McGrew inspired me. And then I've heard of inspired a lot of other people to do that. I've actually been talking to a lot of people who've kind of taken that same thing, but going like IC as like an engineer, it's like actually like so fun. Like
Yeah.
I don't know. It's funny. Like my wife says it was like the happiest she ever saw me was in that moment where I was just doing this kind of IC work, and then and then I kind of got ambitious again. Actually, it was like in there, kind of doing the stuff with deep learning. I was like, man, the state of the art of the tooling has just gotten like so bad. Just like I want to make like some tools to help with this, and then that kind of turned that actually turned into Weights and Biases, the company.
Talk a little bit about what the initial product was. Like, what was the first MVP you built for Weights and Biases?
Uh, yeah, basically, so there's this product called TensorBoard where you could kind of see like loss curves of how your job was training, and it's actually just kind of hard to share it because it sort of ran locally, and I actually wanted to show my boss as like an intern, like what I was doing, you know what I mean? And I had to like screenshot it, right? So I was like, what if it's like a web app where I could just see these like loss curves, and also even like you run these models, you kind of want to see what they're doing. And it was surprisingly hard just because like, you do all this like data munging to get the thing into like these tensors and they're like futzing around. I'm just like, okay, am I like actually recognizing objects? You know what I mean? Like can kind of get like lost, when it's just all these like numbers. And so I wanted to make it easy to like pull it out and view. I just think like, it's funny. I had this co-founder, Sean, who has a totally different founding story. And I think sometimes he doesn't like it when I tell my story. This is a genuine story, but at the same time, he was having like similar insights in a different way. And then we kind of came together because, we were both like feeling these same, problems from different angles. And so, we built this product where you could basically see the loss curves and Yeah, I mean, it seemed like it's one of those things where it's like, okay, I don't know if this is like a company, but I do know this is like useful for me right now. Um, and so that got more people using it and interested in it. We kind of added features over time to it.
When did you and Sean realize this was going to be a company after all?
Well, pretty quickly we wanted to do a company together. I don't know if we really felt totally confident in that product. Like we were both, me and Sean and my other co-founder Chris, we all loved AI and we loved serving AI developers. Like I think we all were really united by like wanting to make good stuff for these people building AI. Like we just felt a lot of like admiration for the people at OpenAI and elsewhere that were kind of like building these awesome models. And I think we just felt a lot of like pride in like serving them. So it was more like we kind of admired these people and we wanted to make them happy, with our product than anything else. And I think in my mind too, I think I had this theory. I think we all had of like, okay, these AI developers, it's like a small market now, but like as AI takes off, like first of all, there's going to be more of them, but also they're going to have like more budget and like more demand. Like starting to see them, their salaries starting to go up. Like Google's trying to hire them, and so like, well, I think like this could be a good business because we'll be serving these like sought after people. And it's funny, like, for the first year, it like wasn't a really good VC pitch. Like I think we only raised our first round because I had, exited my last company, but then it got really hot. So yeah, it's funny. We had about a year where people kind of thought we were crazy, and then we just like checked every like like box on a VC checklist.
Yeah, once the checklist came around to you.
It was like PLG and AI in like 2019 and like deep learning, So yeah, suddenly like it's like, whoa, okay, well, yeah, we're not
I mean, that's
contrarian.
another classic where it's like, I can't tell you people I counsel on how to raise money. And they're constantly like, just feel like if I just had the right pitch, I get the right meeting, I do the right thing, I'll be able to raise money. And I'm always trying to disabuse them of that. It's like, look, the market will determine whether you can or can't raise
Yeah,
money.
okay, Eric, let me tell you how it's. I think I am like, okay, people thought I was like a terrible fundraiser for my first 10 years because I had a business that wasn't working.
Right.
And then when I had a business working, people come to me for like fundraising advice all the time. And they're like, you're like, and people even give me feedback like, Lucas, your pitch was like the tightest like we'd ever seen, And it's like, I am the same guy. I make the same shitty slides. Like literally they're the same. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I just like lived this lesson so strongly. And it's like, people give all this fucking stupid advice of like, you gotta like go in there like confident. You gotta like, like change like move this slide up, this slide down. It's like fucking bullshit, dude. If you have a thing that's going like exponential, if you have a graph of that, you're gonna be able to raise. Or if you hit a bunch of like VC, themes, you're gonna be able to raise. And
Totally.
otherwise, you're totally fucked.
Neither of which you have any control over. So just try to make a good business and trust that those things will work out.
Honestly. Yeah.
I love you like a natural experiment, like a true randomized controlled trial. Like
true experiment. Yeah, it's really. I mean, this is like real takeaway for me. Yeah, it's funny the different ways that people react to you when or the different like characteristics somebody imbues you with when you're succeeding versus failing, and you know you're the same person. It's like there wasn't some breakthrough insight.
I wish more founders knew that because like as soon as you have any kind of success, now you are like a character in the drama of other people's lives. And yeah, they imbue you with all these fantastical qualities, good or bad. It has nothing to do with you, and you have very little ability to influence it.
Yeah.
So yeah, in fundraising, you see it. It's like the very same characteristics where it's like, man, your slides are so crappy and you don't communicate well. Now it's like a sign of what a genius auteur you are. That you're so confident that you didn't even bother to like make fancy slides. And you're like, you don't have to do that other stuff because you're so great. It's just like people are taking the same facts and reinterpreting them in light of the fact that they want something from you, and therefore, put you up on a pedestal.
Although there is like a too extreme version of that, where it's like, okay, nothing I do matters, which I wouldn't want people to like walk away with. Like, I do think like there are like characteristics.
What are the things that do matter? I think that's really what most people want to know.
Yeah.
Like what are things I have control over? What are things that actually matter? Where should I put my time and focus? What's your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I've thought a lot about this because I mean, like probably like you, I've watched a lot of people build these like multi-billion, tens of $billion businesses, totally different people, and so I was thinking like, okay, what do they have in common? And here's like my conclusion about what they all have in common. They all really, really gave a shit about what they were doing, like before it was successful. And the thing they were doing was set up to make billions of dollars, right? So I think those are like the two um, common characteristics. There's also I did this. There's other natural experiment that was really interesting. So like I was at a well-known VC firm's kind of growth stage day and their like early stage day. It was
Yeah.
really interesting. So the growth stage thing, it's all, it's like I'm like the least successful CEO in that group. And so everybody's been, billionaires basically, right? And they're all like weirdos, man. Like they're all like different. And everyone's like just like really different. And then the early stage people is like all these like 20 somethings that just made me feel like bad about myself. Like they're all just like super like killers, you know what I mean? Like they're people I would invest in. They seem like really good, And I was thinking like, okay, this firm is like picking the early stage stuff in a really specific way. But like the
Yeah.
late stage stuff, it's just people that had a business that worked really well. Right.
Right.
And so I think finding a business that works really well is actually the critical step. And I think you can think a lot about that. Like what is going to have like, good economics. I think getting behind trends, I think often the VCs are right about the trends that matter. So like, I wouldn't necessarily like fight them on that. I think they're more right than they're wrong, to be honest, on like what trends are going to work. But then I think there's this other piece of like any market that's good gets saturated, gets lots of competition. A lot of competition you don't know about, you don't hear about. We had lots of competition. Nobody knows about them because I think we won. But like, GitHub had a lot of competition. People don't know about that, right? So I think you really, really need to give a shit about the thing that you're doing. And these people, all, like Travis at Uber is like one kind of guy. Ben at Pinterest, like a totally different kind of guy. I knew them both really well before they were successful, and they're totally different guys. But they both just cared like so much about the things they were doing. And so I think all this other stuff maybe doesn't matter, but like caring about the quality of the thing that you're making is how you win in the market. Like you pick a good market, but then you have to care like a lot.
It's interesting to me that you started with before you even got to like business model and TAM. I was just counseling an entrepreneur the other day, and he was like, had just consumed far too much consultant ease. He was all about the TAM and the market value prop and the B2B versus B2B. I was just like, okay, none of that means anything at all. Like you gotta let that all go. And you got to go from first principles. And we started with, what do you care about?
Yeah.
And then we can figure out if there's a business there in the thing that you care about. And he was like so baffled because he had been taught that like you have to do this through this like analytical process of finding a good market. But it's like, if you're using publicly available data and using publicly available frameworks and you're deductively applying them correctly, then by definition, even if you come up with a great business idea, it's available to tons of other people have the exact same business idea. And if they care more than you're already at a massive disadvantage. So it's much better to start with the caring part of the Venn diagram. And it reminded me, your story reminded me a lot about, that you just kind of have this like love for AI researchers themselves and wanted to make them happy.
Yeah.
I just flashed to Saul Price, who was the original ethos behind what eventually became Costco. And he had trained as a lawyer before he became an entrepreneur. And so when he built Discount Warehouse Retail, he saw himself as having a fiduciary duty to the client.
That's awesome.
So he'd be like, I don't have a fiduciary duty to my shareholders. I have my first fiduciary duties to my customers. So like, there's like these famous stories where like some grocery store would try to mess with him by like, undercutting him on the price of eggs or something. And he would put up signs in the store being like, you shouldn't buy your eggs here. You should walk down the street and get this, like they're selling them at a loss down the street. You should go get those instead. It's like, you can't mess with a guy like that because he out cares you, he cares so much about the thing. And I just thought that simple idea that like, who are you a fiduciary to? Like, who would you rather die than betray? Is such a powerful concept. But I think the reason I wanted to talk to you about it is I give that advice to a lot of people and they're like, oh, it sounds soft, man. I'm talking about love, making people happy. And I want to talk about business, and making money and being serious. And so I just like talk a little bit about how that ethos of like really caring for those customers, like how did that actually help you achieve business outcomes that were tangible and real and weren't just like an excuse to sit around and be like, yeah, everybody out.
Well, totally. I mean, first of all, nobody's going to care as much as you, right? So you can't expect that. But like, I think there's these hard things you have to do when you're starting. And maybe we should start there. Like, there's like when you start and then there's when you scale. But like when you start, like it like sucks, right? Like, you're trying to get people to use your software and they just like won't. You know what I mean? It's like, I feel like a lot of times people just like you got, I mean, I'm always telling people you got to like just like stuff it down their throat. Like, I would set up meetings with people like every week to just like watch them tell me how they didn't like use my software that week. And then I'd like sit there and like watch them like
It's the most painful
instrument.
thing. Oh my God, so painful.
Nobody, I mean, no one's good at it. No one really does as much as people talk about, but you should do it. But it's like, you kind of need caring to sustain there. I think for me, like, I don't know, like people say I'm like kind of insecure about like, do people like, I always think like secretly people think my software sucks, you know what I mean? So then I'm like, I kind of like channeling that of like, like what's wrong? Like, why aren't you using it? Help me like understand, and then it's like, if you care and like if somebody gives you feedback on a Friday night and you like stay up all night and you like fix it by like Saturday morning, you're just going to get a lot more feedback from them. You know what I mean? So it's like, you're going to get a lot more chances to like make your thing better if people perceive like you care and you're like dealing with the problems. And so it's like, you'll never really, I think like, there's a bunch of software like us before us that was out there, like TensorBoard. Like, why didn't TensorBoard beat us? I'll tell you a story. I always tell this story and I hope TensorBoard team doesn't feel bad about it, but I met with them kind of early on and they were like, man, we just don't understand. Like, we keep getting this like feature request to like, change the colors of the graphs, like the lines of the graphs, but it's like so stupid. Like, we have the best like colors, and and I was like, oh, that's great. That's a great thing for you to keep thinking, And it's not like, I don't know. I don't think any like, it'd be really hard, I think, to like kind of get that in like product requirements now, maybe to be like, do this thing that it doesn't mess anybody up. But, people like love these graphs. Of course they want to change the colors of the graphs. You know what I mean? Like, they want to make them like,
it's a delight feature. It's not a quote unquote requirement.
And see, I think if you don't care, it's hard for you to find these delight features. Like another one, I think that's a lot because this actually really gets hard as you scale. But like, we did this funny thing. Like we do like a year wrapped, but for like weights and biases. So it's like Spotify's year wrapped, and we're like, okay, like this is like your best run. This is like how many runs you did. Like you're this percentile of like running stuff, and like people fucking like love it. Like it's like the best like marketing.
I've heard from many machine learning people how much they like it.
Oh, yeah, it's funny actually. If you ask like a random person for like feedback on the product, they're often like pissed about like details of like the way we calculate like what percentile they're in, like I was like robbed, and we're like not a consumer app. I mean, we're like a boring enterprise, like
the most boring product you can imagine. Yeah,
the most boring product. There's nothing fun, but we do that. And like people, people just love it. And I think it sort of it's just something that like, like Amazon's, SageMaker experiments is never going to have like a year wrapped. And I think that it creates a lot of like connection, but I could never convince a product team to do it now, even in my own company, right? Because it would just be like, look, Lucas, we have like 1,000.
Sure. And what's the ROI? How can you calculate the ROI of this?
Yeah. Totally.
You're doing it. No, totally.
But it's like when you're small, you kind of have this advantage of like, you can do that. And it's like really powerful, And so I think, and then I think like when you get enough of those things that, the thing starts to grow, then then you're like feeling good and you like invest more. You know what I mean? I really think like kind of putting in that like delight and like caring enough to like want that in. And I think a different person would do a little bit differently, but I think like, me and really my co-founders, like caring so much about like making our users happy is like kind of why we like emerged from the soup of all the different things like us at the time to be the leading one. Yeah.
I want to pick up on something you said because it's a topic I'm currently really obsessed about, which is, you kind of said it, but when you're small, you can do this. And then as you get large, you can't. And, and I think you're being honest about the fact that if you pitch this idea to your current team, they probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah.
That is such a pervasive thing. And I find that totally fascinating because I feel like most of the really, really successful CEO founder type people that I'm around, we have many of the friends in common who have been very successful. And they often find themselves in a situation where their executive team and people around them whose very jobs and livelihood depends on the fact that they had this like very contrarian and bizarre insight. Mm-hmm. When they say, hey, I have a new insight, people are like, well, where's the evidence?
Totally, yeah.
That's good. And it's like, well, hold on. I didn't have the evidence last time. And they're like, yeah, but that was a good idea. And it's like, there's actually this like implicit idea kind of lurking beneath the surface, I think, in these moments when people are like, he didn't really do it. this company would have existed anyway because it was like a market need, and like somebody had to make this company, and so like the market summoned this company out of the ethos and out of the ether, and this person happened to be there as the way they were like the vehicle by which the universe summoned this company into being. And now that they've done that job, now we can go back to a regular, MBA playbook.
Mhm.
And so the ethos of the company gets diluted. It can't be sustained as it grows. And I feel like so many founders I know, I view that like almost a little bit like tragically.
Yeah.
They wish that they found a way to do it. And then you occasionally find these outlier companies where the ethos has scaled. So I'm like, to me, super obsessed with this question of like, is it possible to like have an ethos that can scale such that the company like would continue to have that level of care about stuff like that, even though it's large? And I'm just curious, like, talk about that transition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm thinking, first of all, I really like my executive team, and if they're listening, love you guys. And if you're thinking about poaching them, I'll fucking kill you. So I would say like
I want to make it super clear that I'm not even saying that anybody, like, this is not the executive team's fault.
No, totally. I just want to make it really clear. Like, I think that the job of an executive is actually really hard, and it's like you're prioritizing all this different stuff, and you're trying to make rational decisions and like keep things going. And I do think like some ideas are really bad, and I think they might say, well, Lukas, you got lucky with like a really good idea, but a lot of your other ideas, might not be.
Totally. Oh yeah. How are they supposed to tell the difference?
Probably true. And I actually do think also, I think they care a lot about delighting the customers. They really do. Like, I mean, I think you can only expect people to care as much as you, but I do think they maybe not as like with as much anxiety as I do, but maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, I have the same level of imposter syndrome that you have. That's the difference.
Yeah. So I think I think they just kind of come at it from a different place where it's like they're seeing all the specific things that customers are, complaining about and like trying to, resolve them. And I think the blind spot is kind of like looking at the whole picture and being like take a step back and like what like big change could we make? And it's sort of like they don't really have the space or power to do that. So it's hard to blame them for not kind of cutting through all the bullshit in the organization and like kind of driving something.
Well, exactly. Look in the mirror. Now you're looking at the problem because who set all that organizational infrastructure up? Yeah. So I appreciate you acknowledging that. Being an executive or a middle manager is an incredibly hard job, super underrated, and like the people that everyone loves to complain about. You take it from the founder mode people and from the like my boss sucks people. It's like you can get it from all sides. It's a tough job, and I have tremendous admiration for the people that actually can execute in those environments. And I think one of the challenges of it is like from their point of view, if you're a middle manager, you're executive, basically every day of your life, some like idiot walks into your office and is like, hey boss, I got a great idea. Let's give our product away for free for no reason to everybody.
Yeah.
Ruin the unit economics of our business. And maybe as an executive, your whole job is to just be like, okay, I hear you. Thanks for your input. Glad to have your buy-in, but let me remember we have a strategic plan and we redirect you back to the thing, get you back on rails. And the problem is like 99% of the time, that's the right thing to do. And then every 1% of the time it's, Steve Wozniak walking into his boss's office and being like, I want to create the Apple computer for you for free.
Yeah.
And they're like, no, man, we don't want it. He's like, please, I'm begging you to please let me do this for you for free. And he's like, no, please quit and go do it. Create $1 trillion company or something. Like every once in a while, it really is the right thing to do. So, it's extremely difficult. And I wonder, you don't have to do this for your executive team. Obviously, I know it's more sensitive because you have to work with them every day. But like, could you, like, if someone came to you for advice on this question, I got a super charismatic, very intelligent, even though he doesn't even realize it, how intelligent he is. Great idea, boss.
Mm-hmm.
And he comes into my office with these crazy ideas every once in a while. Mm-hmm. How am I supposed to tell which ones are the good ones and which ones are the crazy ones?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's like, I think it depends on the idea and the situation. I do think you can like reason through, some of the stuff.
Yeah, how would you do it? How would you think through from first principles?
Well, I don't know. There's different versions. It's sort of like, like radically changing the pricing, I think is you think like, okay, like you have to have like deep empathy, like with the customers and sort of thinking about like how they're going to react. Like we were talking about sort of like delightful features that don't show up in customer complaints, which I think, or like even like, okay, here's a simple thing, a little different than what you're saying, but like I think every app would probably benefit from like less features and better performance, including ours. By the way, right? Like you probably want it better. I mean, this fucking podcast thing we're using, I don't know, like, so like
there's hardly a single app I can think of where I wouldn't feel that way as a user that I would gladly trade.
Yeah.
Performance, yeah.
ideas themselves aren't necessarily like good. It's like, is the organization gonna implement them well? Like I think like if the year wrapped idea that wasn't mine actually, that was a product manager we had, hadn't been like done by someone that had thought of it themselves and like loved it would have just fallen flat and it wouldn't seem like a good idea. It was just like kind of done with love by someone that cared about it. So like, one thing I try to do in my organization is um, try to set clear goals for teams and then push down the decision making as much as I can into people that like, like I think a kind of a GM model, even for like small piece of the product, works really well for something like me where you want to make like a set of good things. Now, I mean, like, Databricks CEO like hates that and wants to be involved in as many decisions as possible. And it's a different style that I think, works. I think different organizations doing different things works different ways. But my thought is like, I want to set up an environment where people can do great work, which means that kind of giving them um, giving them like outcome based goals and
Yeah.
really judging them by that and like being willing to like disagree and commit with, people's decisions when it's in their domain, I think is just really important. Like, even if like they're wrong, I think sometimes it's better to like let someone be wrong.
Yeah. I think it was Guillermo Rauch from Purcell who called it recursive founder mode.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, rather than see yourself as the one true founder who does all the founder mode stuff, it's like, yes, there's some things that only you can do as a founder, but there's a lot of things where you can actually help other people develop their own founder skills and kind of have that sense of ownership. So to me, what I think is so powerful, what you're saying is like, not to take it back to make it sound too San Francisco, but like this is about love for the customer. Like, can you push the decision down to someone who actually has care for the outcome and care of the person who's going to be affected and doesn't just see them as like a number on a screen?
Yeah, and look, I think that works in some cases, right? Like, but it really works in ours. So, like, one thing I try to do is make sure everybody. I guess like a lot of companies probably do this, but I just try to make them really feel the customer viewpoint as much as possible because you get that a lot of CEO, right? You're hearing it every day. But I mean, I see more and more companies doing this, but like one thing we did really early on was create shared Slack channels with every customer that wanted it and let any engineer that wanted to just like join the
And
Slack
listen,
channels. So you'd sort of get this just like flow of like, what everybody's like thinking, just raw, like from the,
so ambient, they call it ambient information awareness in
yeah.
In the manufacturing. And it's incredibly powerful because whenever you look at a report, you're already seeing something massaged by
Totally.
whoever made the report. And even if they meant to give you the most accurate information possible, there's no substitute for the raw information. So having like an ability to kind of sip from that fire hose of customer feedback is super powerful.
I also think it's like more than that though, because it's like when you feel like the customer is your friend, you're just like way more motivated. I think you feel like
Uh,
more shame, like when your thing is like busted for them. And I don't know, I didn't want to be like the only one, in the organization that kind of feels that way. And so like I think we've become friends with a lot of our customers, and that makes them feel more comfortable sharing stuff, and then that makes us feel more pressure to like
yeah.
deliver for them.
How do you, I'm curious about the scaling side of this. So like, how from an employee count, like roughly how big did Weights and Biases get before the acquisition? You were
like 250.
yeah. So like well past Dunbar's number, you're in a place where the customer experience is increasingly being driven by decisions that you weren't in the room for.
Yeah.
Like, how did you instill that feeling of friendship with the customer? Like, how did you teach people or push people to adopt that perspective?
Well, I wonder what random employees would say about it. They'd probably be better judged than I am. But I really do think the shared Slack channel is really powerful because it's not like you join every Slack channel. It's like you join a couple where you know what the customer does and you care about it for whatever reason. And I was always thinking like, okay, and I always had disagreements with heads of customer success on this one, but I'd rather have engineers give kind of sloppy answers. Like maybe they're not like perfectly right, but it's just casually like
Not polished.
engaging. Yeah, it doesn't need to be polished. And even okay, sometimes they screw it up. Sometimes they say things that you wish they wouldn't. But it's like people are engaging like engineer to engineer in these channels, and I think that like fosters a more like real connection. And I really, really tried to get as many engineers. We didn't force it, but engineers that wanted to in there. I also think like intercom is like pretty powerful for this. Like we shut off intercom at some point. Intercom's like a chat bubble app. There's probably others, but it does a really good job of actually like you really see everybody's. I feel like intercom really supports a chaotic customer support style where kind of anyone can like jump in and answer, questions. And that was actually really part of our culture. I think up to about 20 employees were like, we hired a customer support person who's good, and she was like, "We need to use like Zendesk or something because it's like I could actually like organize it and get feedback." But I actually brought Intercom back for new products so that we could kind of go back to that, where you just like you can log on for like half an hour and just chat with some customers as they're using the product, and it's really really powerful.
That's super cool. Talk about the moment when you realized that like weights and biases was going to be more than just a thing. Like you're on the product market. It was like a moment when you realized, oh, this is going to be big.
There are a couple of moments, but I will say I don't think product market fit is as binary as people think when you're inside of it. It's not like, I felt nervous the entire time. We had awesome growth rates. Some other companies have faster growth rates. I don't know. Maybe these companies go from 0 to 100 million in a month, feel product market fit. I bet they do. But I always kind of felt like a little nervous. But there was a moment early on when I walked into OpenAI's office and I saw weights and biases on their monitors, like in dashboards. And I thought, ooh, I think this is working. Like that felt good, and there was a time, I don't know, like I feel like, walking around San Francisco with like a weights and biases t-shirt on, people start to come up to me and like compliment the product, and that always felt really good, and that sort of gave me some, kind of confidence that that it's working. But honestly, our user numbers always felt kind of small. Like, it's funny, it's like, we have hundreds of thousands of users, but I don't know. Everyone else talks about like bigger numbers than us. So I don't know.
Oh, sure. Yeah. No. Yeah. The grass is always greener. Whatever. Yeah. Every B2B person is always like, I wish I was in B2C, and every B2C person is like, I wish I was in B2B or whatever. It's just, it always seems easier, better, faster, quicker.
Yeah.
That's interesting. I'm just curious because you had such a bad experience, with VCs and with your board first time around. Obviously things were very different this time. You had much more leverage and ability to choose. Like what lessons did you take in terms of like board construction, founder control, governance rights? Like just, how did you do things differently this time that they're different? How you did it this time?
But it was kind of funny. People ask me this a lot. I didn't do any special governance because I kind of felt like, if your business isn't working, you're going to lose all those governance rights if you need to like do something or raise money. So I actually got fired. I think I had technically board control, but it's just impossible to operate with an unhappy board in Silicon Valley if you need to like, get a loan or, hire like an executive. So it's like, I'm just like not going to work at a company ever again where there's not board alignment. Like I'm out, so that's like my mindset. So it's like, fuck governance. Like if you guys are unhappy, one of us is leaving,
Right. Exactly.
And so that was kind of my mindset. I think like one trick, or one thing I realized is that the board I had, I think, was really nervous about giving me feedback, really bad at it. And I was also bad at taking feedback, to be fair. So, I think we all have employees where they're kind of sucking and you want to tell them they suck, but you're nervous. And that's at least a bad situation, right? So I tried to make it really, really comfortable for my board to give me feedback. I do think other founders should consider this, where I would I'd end the board meeting early and I would do a session of just the investor side of the board that I didn't know. So like the founders will go out, investors and independents stay in. And I was like, just, take 20 minutes and like try to synthesize feedback to me. And I think that set up a good relationship where like I really always knew where the board stood very clearly.
So powerful.
And so, I would kind of suss out things where like, I wasn't really communicating something or they're like nervous about something. Also the business had a pretty charmed run. So that's probably the bigger effect. I'm sure things would have gotten messy, if it felt like we were like losing money or whatever. But I do think, I think I'm like way more cautious about that and trying to get ahead of it. And I actually also feel empathy for, where VCs are coming from and boards. And so I'm like, look, like, let's just try to really make sure we like, stay aligned here. And
alignment, I think, is the most important important word you said. That if you have that alignment, it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Talk about the acquisition. What's it like to go through? That's like a total whirlwind unto itself.
Well, but the first company I sold was actually like a really scary acquisition where I felt like, I kind of felt like the wheels were coming off the company at the time. It wasn't like there was another offer, so I really wanted to make it happen. So that was really like incredibly like stressful. Yeah. And like people are getting weird. The board is getting weird. Like, I don't know, just I was just like, man, it's the most stressful time of my life, honestly. This one was like, not stressful because I was like, if it falls through, I'll just like keep running this company that I like to
Mhm.
run. And so I was like a little bit stressed, but honestly, it was pretty relaxing. I mean, I thought, we were acquired by CoreWeave, which I think these guys kind of have an East Coast style, which is like interesting. I kind of like it. Like I feel like they're pretty practical. Like it's funny that they sent me the term sheet like over email and just like waited for me to respond, which is so funny. Like I would never do that. You know what I mean? Like I want to like see how somebody's reacting. Like even like an offer to like an IC engineer. I'm like, I want
You
to,
want to sit across the table and hand them.
yeah, exactly. See what they do. You know what I mean? Like feel them out. But so yeah, I mean, it was kind of complicated. Like, there's a lot of like regulatory approval at the size that we were doing, and like, no, it's not like everything's like perfect. But I will say, and Corey, if you're listening, I mean it. I think they've been really good to us. Like, I think it's an exciting vision of like, hey, like let's build a new cloud that's like AI based. It's super cool. They monetize just so like effortlessly with their infrastructure that it kind of like lets them be sort of generous with the tooling, that we do. So I think it gives us space to like just make really, really great, products and because they have an unbelievably good monetization engine. And it's funny, they really have that same customer obsession that we do. So that value, it's funny, they do the same thing with the Slack channels. The customers say the same things about them. Like we had a lot of overlapping customers. So I was like, hey, what do you think about these guys? And they were just like, I don't know, they tell stories about how, like, it's funny. I remember one story, like, it's like, hey, like, Corey, like, on a Slack channel told us to, like, note us down, and that, like, when our training stopped, just let us know, and, like, we'll reset it. And I was just thinking, like, we like, we work on all the clouds, like, a proactive heads up there's a problem. I can't even imagine. Like, I feel like I'm trying to convince them that there's a problem, and it's like, obviously is.
Oh my
Um,
God, the gaslighting you get from those vendors is
yeah.
unbelievable. Yeah, it's world class. I can tell you some hilarious stories of like, yeah, our product is absolutely capable of doing X. Like I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I can read the error message to you right now. What are you talking about? Oh no, you must be doing it wrong. It must be your fault.
And Eric, you got to a human, so you couldn't have been using GCP.
Yeah.
Anyway, um, yeah. So I don't know. It's we're a couple months
Very
in.
own the thing.
Um, yeah, but yeah, it's funny. It's like now I feel a lot of empathy for middle management. I guess that's that's what I
Well,
am.
listen, the more effed up the culture, the more painful the middle management job. Like truly, the degree of difficulty is like added so high because now you've got politics involved, and you've got like the deception that's required to get anything done, and defending
Totally.
your budget. Yeah, what a total nightmare. But I think there's a lot of people listening who are your customers,
Mhm.
who will be very happy to hear that's going well, and you feel like there's like strong fit in terms of ethos alignment with CoreWeave. That's great.
Yeah, and they've really done right by our customers. I mean, I don't. I think customers are a little nervous, right out of the gate. But I mean, yeah, NPS has gone up and retention's gone up. So I feel really good with that.
So before we wrap, like just wrapping back around to AlphaGo, and I think what's so remarkable about this story is like you had the aha moment at the exact right time to get back on this trend and to do the thing that you really loved. And so I know people are going to want me to ask, like, what are you seeing now that's making you go aha for the future? Like, what's your perspective on what we're seeing in terms of development of new models, effect that's having on productivity and work? Like, I think just saw a really interesting study that was basically like, if all these productivity from AI claims were true, we'd be seeing a huge burst of new software. They're like, where's all the new indie games? Where's all the new, like, why isn't there more new software if the tooling is, the AIs are going to vibe code us to this utopia and everyone's 10 times more effective? Where is it? And I just thought that was like really fascinating.
Dude, people are such fucking whiners and they're too cynical. Just like wait, like 5 minutes. Man, it's like, like I don't have any contrarian takes. Like it's the same stuff that everybody's seeing. Like vibe coding is like amazing. And people are like, oh, but it like the code quality is bad. It's like, come on. Like
Well, I think that's honestly a good place to wrap because like that it is incomprehensible. And I think what I find so interesting about it is people seem to have unlimited energy and time for takes, opinions, debating the future of AI, discussing, say, whatever. And like the ratio of time they have for that to time actually like using it to figure out what it's good for is so out of whack that if we could just like get people to claw back like 10% of that time, like just 10% less time on takes, a little 10% more time on actually like figuring out what the tool is useful for, like for your specific use case is, would do a lot of good.
It's a strong way to end an hour of pontificating, Eric. I like it.
Yeah, get off the podcast. Get back to Claude Code, back to the salt mines of AI vibe coding, whatever.
We make the takes. I don't want competition.
Yeah, everyone out of the takes business. You leave that to Lukas and I. We're in a good shape. Oh man, that's great. Well, thanks. Listen, we have so many mutual friends who are AI researchers who are so grateful to you for all that you've done to make their lives easier. So,
oh, thank you.
Yeah, awesome. For all that they do for us that you've done for them, I thank you.
No, appreciate it.
You've been listening to The Eric Ries Show. The Eric Ries Show is produced by Jordan Bornstein and Kiki Garthwaite, research by Tom White and Melanie Rehack, visual design by Reform Collective, title theme by DB Music. I'm your host, Eric Ries. Thanks for listening and watching. See you next time.